Welcome to the Goddess Conference Conversations. In this space, we will connect with interesting personalities, presenters and artists from our international community and chat about the upcoming conference's topics and themes.
Hi everyone, today I've got the one and only Kay Gillard with us. Kay, please could you introduce yourself and share how you were drawn to 𝗚𝗏𝗏?
Hey Ria, thank you for having me. Hi everyone, I'm Kay. I'm a shamanic healer and a priestess and a witch and a Reiki master and all those kinds of things. I was drawn to Glastonbury. It's a weird story. Do you want the weird story?
Always.
It was 𝗁𝗄𝗕's doing, which won't surprise you because you know I'm a devotee of 𝗁𝗄𝗕. I had come to Glastonbury just because somebody said, oh, let's go have a look around. And I ran into somebody that I knew from my choir in London. So I used to sing for the London Pagan Choir. And she said, oh, I'm here doing a course. Let me get you some leaflets. And so at my next choir rehearsal, she gave them to me. And I was doing a 𝗁𝗄𝗕 ritual and I had all these leaflets. And I was like, something in my life, I needed things to change. It wasn't one of those like crisis moments. Yeah, it was a crossroads. And so I did this ritual and then I fell asleep. And obviously I had all this stuff lying around, all these leaflets. And when I woke up, one of them was stuck to my face because I'd fallen asleep on it. And I was like, what's this? And it was about shamanic healing, learning shamanic healing and some sound healing in Glastonbury. And I took that to be the answer. So I signed up to the course, which happened to be in Glastonbury. And it's not really the type of shamanic work that I do now, because this was 19 years ago, 20 years ago. But it was enough to tie me to the land. And I never really got free of it.
What is healing for you?
Oh my God. It's a good question. It's not curing, I would say. I know people say that in healing work. It's not like I have an illness and now I'm going to be cured of that illness. It can be that. But for me, it's a continual pathway. It's a commitment. It's a continued work to know yourself better. So much of our behavior and what we do isn't actually us. It's the things we're struggling with, the things we're carrying, the things that are, old traumas and patterns of learned behavior that aren't the true self. And healing strips away that and gives us access to power that's, I think, is our birthright, to be powerful people, to be full of our own essence. So for me, it's the journey of that. It's the journey of learning who we really are, how powerful we are, and how much of what we think is us, it just all falls away when you do the real work. So sometimes healing is removing an illness that's not really part of our essence, but sometimes it isn't. I know people, incredible healers, who live with, long-term illnesses or disabilities, that aren't miraculously removed. But their healing is profound and their healing gift for other people is profound, because they know themselves and they have called in their own power without taking it for anyone else. It's connection to source and connection to ourselves. That's what it is for me.
Do you consider yourself a healer?
I do. Yeah, I do. People are funny about the word, aren't they? Sometimes people say, well, you can't actually heal someone. We all heal ourselves. And I believe that. But it's a useful word to describe what we do, what we facilitate. I don't necessarily think it's helpful for me to say I am a person who facilitates your own healing, or, it's all healers are that. So yeah, I do consider myself to be that. And it's interesting because I came to magic and devotional work and priestess work long before I discovered healing work. Yeah. And it is probably a bigger influence on my healing work than any of the healing training I've ever had, weirdly. It's my magical training and my ceremonial background and my work as a priestess that really informs my healing. So I guess I would have said, oh no, I'm a priestess, I'm a witch, I'm a magician, and I am those things. But the thing I lead with, and the thing that sort of my passion, I guess, is definitely, I have lots of passions, but I don't know, maybe my purpose. That sounds quite grandiose. I don't mean it that way. But yeah, I consider myself to be a healer. And I'm a particular kind of healer. I always say, like when we were talking earlier, I said I'm a threshold healer. Like some people are really good at like soothing pain or like keeping people balanced, or there's all kinds of different healers. I'm a really good healer for the moment of really big change. That's the space that I hold, which I think is where the priestess work comes in, because that's effectively initiation, right? And I think a lot of healings are moments of initiation that people are calling in for themselves and facilitating for themselves.
Do you have a connection to a specific goddess of healing?
Yeah, a lot, and a few actually. I am a devotee of Hecate, and I think that she is massively important and underrepresented in the healing world. She's very often considered to be like the goddess of witches, which is, you know, absolutely right and accurate. But again, thresholds, right? Liminal space. I'm a shamanic practitioner. You know, I journey into other realms and bring back things that have been lost. And she's the guide of souls. She's, you know, what better patron deity could you have for soul retrieval, which is one of the main types of healing that I do, than Hecate? She's the perfect example of, you know, going through the doorways. She's the key holder. She is like the light in the darkness. All of these things perfectly align themselves to healing work, but also just like the metaphor for the journey of healing generally. You know, she's the guide on the pathway. Like Hecate is the guide, you know, the one who walks with you. She is the point of initiation, the gateway, the crossroads. These are all powerful times. So for me, all of my healing work, and this doesn't mean that it's necessarily something that my clients would know or feel aware of in the moment. I dedicate all of my healing work to Hecate. Even if, you know, I do some healing through the wheel of the year things, and sometimes I'll work with other deities. I did a Bridget one, and I did a Persephone and Hades one. Hecate's fine with that. But generally speaking, my healing work and my teaching work is all dedicated to her. So I'd say she's my number one deity for healing work. But I'm very interested in working with multiple gods for healing, and I find devotional work can be very healing in and of itself. I've done quite a bit of work with Persephone and Hades. Persephone is very interesting to me as this idea of, rather than thinking of it as this sort of passive thing, she was just carried off to the underworld. And
she
poor
chose
her.
to go to the underworld, yeah.
And chose to stay. She's no fool. Oh no, accidentally I ate a pomegranate. No. I think she made that choice to become a queen, to become an adult woman.
Choice too.
Yes.
And it's so interesting because she went from like this really light, bright, the floral maiden, to also being like, yes, I am the floral maiden, and she is light and bright and colourful, but she's also the queen of the underworld.
Amazing.
It's both. It's light and dark together, which is where the healing happens. You
can't have one without the other for healing work. A lot of healing work is, oh, it's all love and light. It's all positive, you know, positive vibes only. How are we supposed to do the deep healing work if we're afraid to address the fact that there's, not to glorify it, but there is wisdom in the dark places. There is there's just so much understanding of
feeling
ourselves
happens.
and of the gods in our trauma and in our grief. You know, as healers, we must be strong enough to sit in that and to hold our people, our communities, or our clients or our students. We have to hold them while they sit in that. That, I think, is part of our job as healers. So I'm really interested in finding the power in those dark places, but you know what I mean? The underworld healing is really powerful to me. So I like to work with Persephone. I love to work with the Morrigan. I'm a very big fan. And I've had a lot of healing experience from her. The first ever possessing oracle that I did, like a embodiment, or where a proper oracle that I ever did was with the Morrigan, actually, not with Hecate. And it was a form of the Morrigan called 𝗚𝗟𝗓𝗓, which means like frenzy or panic. And I don't actually suggest that that's where you do your first oracle. I think you should find a calmer deity than that. But one of the most exceptional, I'm a real believer in doing this devotional work. I didn't go in and say, give me healing. I was honoring her. I wanted to channel her word. I wanted to understand her magic. You know, whenever I work with the gods, I never call a god in for a healing or a goddess in for a healing that I don't know, that I haven't learned about or done, and you know, research. Offerings. Yeah. And research is offerings in itself too. And so I always try to honor the gods that I work with. They're not tools to be picked up and used for healing. This is, you know, devotional work and building a relationship with the gods. But what has surprised me over the years and continues to happen is that I receive healing by being in their presence. You know, that idea of the concept of 𝗬𝗲𝗄𝗕, which is just like the, you know, merging with the gods, like bringing a deity into your body. And when they leave, you get to carry part of that divinity with you. You are changed by it. That is healing, not because we're asking for healing, but because we're honoring the gods.
Yeah.
And when I did this oracle for 𝗚𝗟𝗓𝗓, and she is frenzy and battle and terror, she showed me was a peacefulness that I have never experienced with another deity. And it was what the reward, if you survive the battle terror, then the reward on the other side is a peacefulness that is greater than people who don't go to battle. That's kind of the feeling of it. And it just, I felt it in my whole body and I've never forgotten it. I mean, this must have been 15 years ago, maybe more. I can see everything in that vision that she gave me in that moment. I can call every single detail of it to mind. I remember that feeling. It changed me. And that was really, and I wasn't doing a healing session. I was just being with her. I was just doing priestess work. I think we can underestimate that. I did a really powerful healing ritual. You know, I like my healing songs. I did like a big healing song ceremony with the Norns, with 2 other priestesses. And I was working with 𝗲𝗏𝗏, who's another one of my all-time favorite deities. I just adore her. She's really hard to research. There's like nothing written about her. So I just did a year of devotion a few years back. And then I just, you know, trust what I saw, I suppose. I did this amazing ritual and I felt really great afterwards, and she was fully present. We did oracles and it was like a big ritual thing. And the next day I had to drive a friend back to the station. I had this whole thing when I moved to Glastonbury. I hadn't driven for so many years. I lived in central London. I had to get a car, and so there's like this weird anxiety around driving that I've had ever since I've come here. The day after, my friend was like, oh my God, I need to get the train. I need to like leave now. I was like, no worries. And I wasn't like, oh, am I wearing my Optimum driving shoes or am I checking time? And I just like hopped in the car and just drove her there. And on the way back, I was in my car, one hand on the steering wheel, one hand on the gear stick, singing at the top of my voice. And I suddenly went, oh, this is how I used to drive. Oh, I don't have anxiety around driving anymore. And I was like, oh, I just feel really like something had recentered in me from having done a day of ritual and oracular work. I like so many different deities. The Morrigan 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 is a huge one for me also. And the gods, Hermes, Hades, 𝗔𝗓𝗏𝗧𝗢𝗡, huge 𝗔𝗓𝗏𝗧𝗢𝗡 fan, especially here in the tour, please, perfect. So I think all the gods can be healing, because I think that just by serving the gods and being in that space of devotion, they leave something behind in us that changes us and heals us without us asking.
Is there a specific healing journey in which the goddess and your spiritual practice played a role, and would you be comfortable enough to share that with us today?
Yeah, I thought about this. So I know that you wanted to like talk about specific examples. It's been so many years that I feel like I don't feel like there's any healing work that I've done that isn't connected to the rest of my path. It all kind of, I used to be like, here's my priestess work over here, and here's my magical work, and then here's my healing work. And don't forget to separate the different kinds of healing work, because, you know, but now I'm just like, oh no, it's all woven together. I'm much more comfortable with, I don't know, I guess once I spend so much time in them, I'm like, oh, hang on. If we bring this part from here, it might, so long as you've got your grounding in all the different systems, then I think it's fun to mix them together and allow them to come through. So I don't think there's any healing where that hasn't been present, I suppose. In terms of a deliberate way, I did a really interesting experiment. It must have been 3 years ago, my goodness. And there's a priestess friend of mine who has a lot of experience working with the goddess Freya, who I'm quite fond of, but didn't really know very well. And obviously, she knew that I am a devotee of Hecate, and she's like, I'm very fond of her, but I feel like I don't know her very well. So I don't know what happened. We got a bit excited. We decided to do, we called it our student exchange program. And what we decided to do is for the Sabbats for a whole year, I would write a Hecate ritual and she would write a Freya ritual. And then we would both do those rituals. We weren't in the same place, so we were sending them to each other, but we were doing them at the same time. We decided to do that and did not realize that it was going to turn into a really transformative year for us both. And I got a really lovely connection with Freya, and I still keep a Freya altar. And my friend got a lovely connection to Hecate. But as we were progressing through the wheel, they're like, okay, there are things about your life that, I mean, both of us still say, I saw her quite recently, we're like, nothing's the same. There was so much that became healing that wasn't our intention. We were just there to honor the gods. And one of the really powerful things that happened for me was I was quite a way into it. I feel like it must have been past the 6-month mark, where it was just each time going deeper and deeper into the work that they wanted us to do. And I feel like if you're doing a lot of work with the gods, they want you to let go of the stuff that's holding you back, and they want you to be able to share what you know. They want you to, you know, be in the role you're supposed to be in.
Yeah.
And so I was really sort of wanting to sort of be in service, and they were really like, yeah, we'd like you to get your act together to be ready to do what we want. And there was one particular meditation that we did, and I was with Hecate, and she just showed me 3 parts of myself. This was not the purpose of the journey. The purpose of the journey was to just see what it was about, seership. It was about, you know, honoring that part of Hecate that is kind of looking into the dark mirror and seeing what is in that liminal space. We're stepping into that liminal space. And she showed me 3 parts of me, one from my past, one from my present, which honestly looked like it was on the verge of something becoming not what I wanted, you know, like potentially, I don't even know. It was really emotional to look at. I was like, oh my God, I'm going in the wrong direction in a certain aspect of my life, and I could see it. And then a potential future self that was unhappy. And there was something I was resisting doing at the time as well. And this was who I could potentially be, or who I was carrying, if I didn't address it, I suppose. And Hecate allowed me in what was essentially supposed to be a devotional ritual. She was like, I am showing you these 3 things, and you can choose today. Either you can release them or you can stay on the path. And I was like, oh, this is some nice seership though, so will you show me what's going to happen? I was like, no. Will you let go of the things or not let go of the things? And so I had to say, you know, release my past self. And then I ended up sort of doing ceremonies sort of to these versions of myself, a present self and a future self. And it was a really strange thing. It's not a type of healing. Like, I even find it hard to explain what it was. Like, I saw these 3 versions, parts of myself or versions of myself that needed to be healed and released. But it's not a healing that I would have dreamt up or created. And it's not what I went into the ceremony to do. And yet it was hugely transformative. And then, of course, you know, when you come out of something like that, huge emotional stuff. And remember, I was doing the foreign exchange program. So my friend was also like, what was that? And what we were finding is we were both being called into the same work that was not written in our rituals.
Do you perceive a stark contrast between soul healing and physical healing? Or are those ultimately bound together? What's your take on it?
I think they're bound together. I've seen physical changes occur in people. I do energy work. I do no physical manipulation. I'm not a body worker. I don't prescribe anything. I don't use anything physical. I don't use any oils, anything like that. It's all energy work. I did a power retrieval once. It was a community healing. There was a circle of us. And one of the people that showed up, I was just like, oh my God, I'm going to do a healing and have the whole community do a healing for one person. And I knew that's the person I wanted it to be. But that's not how it works. I didn't want to just make everybody say that. So the way that it works is I told them all that they would put their name in a hat, and I would draw the name. And of course, it was this person. But it was somebody who wasn't very mobile, who was very sick, and we do this work on low to the ground. And so we kind of set everything up, and she walked on, you know, 2 canes, and was like, I can't lie down there, because if I lie down there, I won't be able to get up. And there wasn't space for her to be sat in a different way or whatever. The group just turned around and she said, oh, someone else can have the healing. And the group was like, absolutely not. No, they were like, we are here. We will lay you down and we will get you back up. You will receive this healing. And so we did this incredible power retrieval work for her, and the whole community sang into her body, and it was all about calling her soul and her power. It was really beautiful. And she got up by herself. Physically, she transformed in front of us. I did a power retrieval this morning, and when she sat up, I went, oh my God. Like, her eyes, you look different. And she was like, really? And then she went to the bathroom. She came back, she was like, I do look different. I've seen myself in the mirror. And it physically is visible. But what I'm doing is journeying into non-ordinary reality, bringing back, you know, power animals, spirit medicine, lost bits of soul. It has such, I mean, this is, yes, there is the difference between what's physical and what's spiritual, but this is just the vessel for the spiritual work. I've had a soul retrieval and walked down the street, and people that I knew didn't recognize me because I looked different. And, you know, I don't think we can separate them really. I'm much more interested in the business of soul and spirit and deities. It's just my way, and not the most earthy of people. But we're housing that, and so the changes can be physical. So I know from having watched things like that happen in front of me that I have to accept that they're connected. And sometimes it feels very subtle because you're working in those subtle realms. It doesn't always manifest that way. But I didn't do anything physically to this lady who couldn't walk. You know, I had a healing song circle. You get to hear those from the venue all the time. They're quite noisy. We had someone come along to support his wife who wanted to come, didn't want to come by herself, but he was completely deaf and a non-believer. And he was like, I'll pay my ticket fee, but I'm just going to go to sleep in the corner. And we were like, oh, okay. And we did, and we knew he'd feel the drums, but he wouldn't be able to hear the songs. And he was the convert of the day. He was like, what? Oh my God. He was like, I heard it. He was like, I saw things, I heard things. And even when we were singing later, and there were certain things that we did, and he was like, oh, when you did that, that sounded really, and his wife was like, but you can't hear it. But in the spirit realm, he could.
How have you experienced the healing energy of Avalon? How would you describe how living and working in Avalon has influenced or affected your healing work?
I'm so held by the land. I dream differently here. I live really close to the 𝗤, and it affects me. I can feel it to be there. So I think it changes me, but I don't tend to work really on the land with people specifically, or bring sort of local spirits into the work unless it's relevant to the people that I'm working with, you know. But for my own healing and my own life, it's made a tremendous difference to me. The 𝗤 has been, as I say, years ago, I came here and started to learn about shamanic healing. And it really did stitch me into the land in a way that meant I felt like I could feel where the 𝗤 was from anywhere in the country, which is a really weird thing to say, but I really felt that. And it was such a deep connection. I still feel that. I have had so many spontaneous healing experiences just by being on the 𝗤. And sometimes that's to do with deities. I have had a lot of 𝗓𝗏𝗏𝗔𝗦𝗧𝗎𝗓 experiences, and in the White Spring, I love the White Spring. I've had really powerful experiences in there. The land here is so alive with that transformational energy that I feel like it sees an opportunity. I think it sees you and says, hey, actually, you've prayed for something, you're on the cusp of having a healing, and then it's almost like the land does some of it for you. Not all land necessarily wants to do that, but the land here, like I said, I don't tap into it specifically for other people's healing, but for my own healing, it's been hugely transformational. I work so much with deities that are perhaps not of this land. I work with Hecate, I work with the Norns, I work with the Morrigan, I work with Mart. You know, they're not from here, but they're all deities of like liminal space. They're all deities that are slightly on their outliers on their pantheons. And Glastonbury
is a liminal space.
It really is. It really is. And so for me, I feel like that's why I was drawn here, not necessarily just for the land, which I love so deeply. I love the land here. I love all of Somerset, really. The whole of the West Country, I just adore. But it's not just the land, it's that quality that Glastonbury has of taking you through a doorway into somewhere else and transforming you from one thing into another thing. The 𝗤, for me, is the most powerful place here. I love the White Spring, but being on the hill, I mean, there's nothing more powerful than that to me here. And it makes such a a difference to who I am as a person, and maybe to how easy it is for me to hold space and open the doorways. I don't know. I feel like I'm better at it since I've been here. The land itself is a bit of a portal. I mean, I work a lot with the trees and with the hill, the spirit of the hill itself, but the hill is a portal into fairy, to work with Gwynedd Neath. That's been really powerful for me, but on a personal level rather than something that a lot of my clients I work with remotely. So, and I like to meet people where they are. So if I work with clients or students who are Buddhist or Christian or Hindu or Muslim or whatever, I will work within, I bring my sort of, the things that I know need to be done in order to make the work safe, and I have my gods, but the work is for them, so we will always work within their system and their gods, and you know, with lands and energies that are important to them. So, but I think being more connected to the land I'm on, not that I wasn't connected to London, you know, I lived right by the Thames, and it's where I'm from, and it's a powerful place for me. But there's a difference. You become so connected to the land here. I think it has made me better at opening those doorways and holding that space for people, perhaps.
Why is the archetypal maiden aspect of goddess associated with healing for you?
I'm not sure specifically that it is, I suppose, because I think we need healing at every stage in our lives and at every point on our spiritual journey. I love the idea, or I like the bloom. We're recording this sort of past 𝗚𝗟𝗏 going towards the spring equinox, and for me that's really powerful as a time for, it is about balance, but it's about growth and blooming and flowering, and that for me is something that we can harness for healing. So in that sense, working with that idea of maidenhood and like youthfulness, I think is important. It's a good energy to tap into if we're going back to work on aspects of ourselves from when we were young. I think that can be important. But I also think we need to work with the different, all the facets of deity can bring us healing. So for me, it doesn't feel necessarily that it's like a leading healing energy for me. We talked about Persephone as the maiden who then becomes the queen, and both of those things being important. And I think that's something to kind of be aware of and think about. But I also think about maiden deities, what it often meant was not necessarily youthfulness, but goddesses who were unmarried, who weren't consorts of particular gods, goddesses who didn't have children. It means independence. It means personal power, I guess. And the maiden is slightly a part of that, I think, because there is still an independence and a separateness from the weights of the world to a certain extent. I think that's powerful for healing, and I think it's really powerful for us to sort of work with our younger selves and to bring that. It's an energy of growth and possibility. So as a symbol, that's how I would work with the maiden aspect of deity for healing. But I think healing is powerful at every point in our life.
Do you feel healing is a necessary process we feel after wounding or trauma, or do you perceive it as an ongoing process to nurture in your life in order to face the world in a more holistic and integrated way?
All of the above. I think it's both. I think we talked about what is healing about being like the ongoing journey and that sort of lifelong commitment to knowing yourself and being your best self, I suppose, being in your power. But I think that sometimes when we have like an actual trauma or a wounding, whether that's physical or emotional or both, as a society, we're a bit conditioned to go to a doctor for that, take like a pill for that. And you should absolutely do that if that's what's required. You know, I'm not saying don't do those things. If you have a broken bone, don't pray over it. Go and get someone to set it properly. You know what I mean? We should definitely be doing those things. But sometimes I think what's been lost is the fact that the soul and the energy body was also disrupted by that trauma. And that part must be healed as well. If we go and have surgery and that surgery fixes us physically, that's amazing. But they've not just cut through the physical body, they've cut through our energy to get in there. And that needs to be repaired also. So I do think that it's an ongoing process, and I always think that that's the most important thing. But hearing you talk about, oh, that exact, you know, the wound or the trauma, we move on from it. We heal the immediately obvious parts of it. But the spiritual side of those wounds must be attended to. There's actually no getting past that, I think.
No, it's all connected.
It's all connected. I think it's part of the ongoing journey that the things we carry with us, you know, kind of come full circle in the conversation. There are things that we carry with us as humans in the world. There's stuff that happened to us when we were kids, or, you know, heartbreaks or unhealed griefs that we've got, or even old injuries, the shadow of an old illness that we've recovered from, but that we're still carrying the memory of it in our body. Just because if we didn't have someone at the time who could tell us, oh, we also need to do the spirit work here, you can go back. There's always time to go in and do that repairing work. And that's part of knowing ourselves and where our behavior comes from, and all that kind of wider healing about becoming who we can be, the best version of ourselves. But it's actually just going in and saying, oh no, when I was in that accident or had that injury or that terrible thing happened, I had to deal with the immediate trauma and the immediate aftermath. There are other things who are buried underneath that in the shadow of the trauma. And those things will stay hidden, manifesting in their little ways in our lives if we don't go in and heal those. So attending to the traumas and the wounds, not identifying with them. I am, you know, this person who this has happened to. I don't want us to get caught up in the, you know, identifying ourselves as survivors of this trauma. To go in and be with that version of ourselves and hold them and heal them is an essential part of healing from trauma, and doing the soul work that's required for that is completely invaluable. It's part of that long process. Some of it's just maintenance stuff where we show up every day and say our prayers and try to honour our vows, but a lot of it actually we have to go in and be like, oh, 14-year-old Kay, you're right, babe. And there's so many points on all of our lives. We've all had trauma. You know, none of us get away without any wounding. We can go in and do the spirit work for each of those things. So it's both.
What do you think the collective needs to heal from the most at the moment?
I think as a collective, one of the most important things we have to do at the moment is to heal the planet, like the waters, the ground that we're on. I mean, that's the really big obstacle that we're all facing at the moment, like as a species. There's sort of like been a real disconnect between us and our land. And moving here and being, oh, here are the springs, here are, like, I'm in the sacred land of Avalon. But a lot of us don't feel that way when we're wandering on the land that we live on. And I would like people to be more connected.
And more reverent to the land and the water. Yeah,
like we're the guardians and the stewards of that. We don't own that. This idea of having dominion over the land, I just think the deepest wounds we've given ourselves as a society is that we're disconnected from the land that we're on. So I would like us to kind of feel an awareness of our connection to the earth itself and to the waters specifically. I mean, we're just filling them with stuff that's going to mean we're going to be in some real trouble. We can't run out of clean water. You know, we must have that. We can't keep poisoning the land that we're on. So I feel like as a society, that's probably the biggest thing. And I was talking recently, I've been doing some elemental healing, and in the water session that I did, we were talking about, do you know Sandra Ingerman, the shamanic teacher? She's amazing. She trained with Michael Harner. She wrote a book called Medicine for the Earth. It's like transforming personal and environmental toxins, I think is the full title, something like that. And what she discovered over the course of the workshops and the writings that she was doing was that the water near to us when we're doing work, not on the water, on ourselves in our ceremonies, changes the water that's near us without looking at it, you know what I mean?
Just by being in the space.
Just by being in the space. And Masaru Emoto, the Japanese scientist who took water and wrote particular words on, or played particular music, or got like polluted water and then some from like pure holy springs, and then sort of froze them and looked at the crystals that were formed inside at this real like microscopic level. And we've got beautiful snowflakes when we say I love you.
Yeah.
And these sort of sludgy, yeah. So imagine then, if we're all doing healing, I do, in the Sami people would have called this '𝗷𝗍𝗄𝑘𝑖ng, but it's something I didn't know about. 𝗷𝗍𝗄𝑘𝑖ng is the act of singing the land or singing a person, like or an energy, like calling it in and then singing it to honor its energy. And I think that the water particularly likes to be sung to as like an offering. So when I go and do spiritual work by a river or by the sea, I always sing to the water, you know, a prayer and a way of introducing myself. And especially if I'm in foreign lands, then I'll sing a little bit of my own land and then listen to the song of the land and the waters that I'm on. And I think if we were doing that more, we could change the what the water is actually holding, you know.
The vibration of it.
Yeah.
It's all vibrational.
Yeah. So I think as a society, that's the really, really big obstacle that we're facing in a very real way. In terms of the sort of spiritual work, I think as a collective, it's about the disconnect between the spirit and the material. There's a temptation to live up in, oh, I've had a vision, and, you know, which is what I'm a shamanic practitioner. Like, I'm a priestess of Hecate. I believe in visions, definitely. But there's a temptation at the moment to accept things that sound nice and feel nice, particularly about the gods or about the past or about healing, you know, shiny, high energy, high vibrational things. And we're not in our bodies. We're not living those things. And what I would like, you know, collectively is for people to really inhabit themselves and their lives. Can't just be having, if you're a monk living on some remote mountain, awesome. Knock yourself out, have visions all day long. But if we're being called to live in the world and do our work in the world, then we must be present, which means we need to ask questions and be a bit more critical thinking around ideas about healing and about, you know, you can't just accept. I had this conversation with another healer. We were talking about the importance of intuition versus the importance of skill and education. And for me, as tribal collective of healers and spiritual seekers, rather than, you know, the physical manifest issues for our society, one of the biggest issues we have is everyone's like, oh, well, you know, I had a vision and so I'm going with my intuition. I'm doing what feels good. I'm doing what I've seen, and my truth is as valid as anything else. And actually, I don't think that's true. I know that's a controversial thing to say in this world, but I'd like people to question that a bit more. Well, what does it actually mean? And, you know, does that mean that I don't have to feel ever uncomfortable in a situation? So that's not healing. Oh, I'm not going to be around this because, you know, I've had a vision and I want to be only in this high vibrational space. And that's why you find so many like healers and spiritual people who
are grounded.
Yes, they're not functional in basic ways, because actually we need to come in here and say, well, okay, but how does it feel in our body? What does it really mean? What does this vision actually tell me, being as I'm an imperfect vessel and it's all being filtered through only my own limited knowledge? I think that our intuition does not count for anything without skill and knowledge to understand how to deploy that intuition in a safe, skillful way. I sound like such a party pooper with this. Like, everyone wants to be like, oh yes, you know, I've had a vision of the goddess. And it's great, you should, you know, do devotional work. I believe in this stuff. I believe in visionary work. I'm a visionary healer. It's one of the phrases that I would use to describe myself. But it is also, if we are healers, it is our job to learn that what we are doing is safe. We must be skilled. We must learn what we're doing, make sure that we understand what we're doing more. So I think that as a collective of spiritual seekers, healers, priests and priestesses, grounding our spirituality in something real, in our education and our knowledge, is essential. Because if we're going to be serving our community, they expect us to know what we're talking about. And so I would like to kind of cut off some of the illusory and ungrounded things. That's what I would like to see healers really sitting with it and going, well, what does this actually mean? Feeling it in our body. Is this actually true? Am I just avoiding that thing because it doesn't feel comfortable? Some healing is uncomfortable. And I think that's, as a collective of healers, I'd say that was a really big thing that I think we all need to address.
If you could send a healing blessing to all of the community of the Goddess Conference celebrating the Goddess of Healing this year, what would it be?
It would be that they have a real moment of connection with deity, however deity appears to you and is important to you. You know, I believe in all the gods, and you know, there will be people who want to work with a warrior goddess, or want to work with a mother goddess, or want to work with a sea god or whatever. But it is that contact with them, like we were talking about before. It leaves, like you said, imprint. It leaves something with us that we get to carry. I would hope that everybody who comes to the Goddess Conference gets
a moment of connection.
That moment of real visitation by a deity. And they won't necessarily even be able to put that into words, because you can't really. But that, I think, is the most amazing blessing any of us could have. So I would hope for that healing blessing for everyone who comes.
I love that. I wish that too. That's so beautiful. Kay, on behalf of everyone that listens and watches, thank you so much for your time.
Ah, you're welcome.
And thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your magic. And thank you for this talk. And we hope that we get to see you again soon at the conference, or anyone that is listening and watching who might want to connect more might be able to reach out and find you on your channels.
Yes, I'm on kaygillard.com, and I am 𝗂𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 on Instagram, and I'm on Facebook, and I'm bimbling around town. Come and talk to me.
We can't wait to see you around town.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah,
thank you for having me. It's been really nice to talk about it in such a, in an open way. Thanks for your brilliant questions.
Thank you.
This interview was conducted by Ria Varma. Join us this year for the 29th Glastonbury Goddess Conference, a joyful gathering of goddess-loving people, a 6 days in-person event in Glastonbury, Avalon, running from Tuesday 30th July to Sunday 4th August 2024, with the fringe events starting from Sunday 28th July. This year the theme is the Goddess of Healing. It's our maiden year, the first year of a new 5-year cycle. International presenters, transformative workshops and experiences, deep ceremonies on the sacred land of Avalon, community, art, fun, and love for Goddess. Let your healing journey begin this year. Join us for the Glastonbury Goddess Conference, Goddess of Healing. There are so many options to participate: full conference tickets, weekend tickets, day tickets. Find what suits you best and get your ticket now at goddessconference.com.